Are you troubled by strange noises in the middle of the night?
Do you experience feelings of dread in your basement or attic?
Have you or any of your family ever seen a spook, specter, or ghost?
If the answer is yes, then don't wait another minute. Pick up your phone and call the professionals. Go
Ghostbusters!
Our courteous and efficient staff is on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural elimination needs.
We're ready to believe you!
Born in the 80s, raised in the 90s, we are the Inner Light Project. We wasted time at the cassette recorder making our favorite tape mixes, and we spent many an hour trying to decipher shapes in our Magic Eye books. We are so excited today to be talking to you about Ghostbusters and our first experience with the original Ghostbusters movie, and this is also meant as an anticipation of the new Ghostbusters movie coming out today, actually, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're going to be bringing you some things about our experience with Ghostbusters, and we are going to share some connections that we have with the franchise. So I'm just going to start it out here by introducing my friend Nathan. Nathan, you want to say hi to the kids?
Hello.
And I'm also joined by my friend Doug Bailey.
Hello.
And, of course, my friend Pastor Derek McCarson.
Bustin' makes me feel good.
So, yeah, again, we're going to be talking about Ghostbusters. And really, guys, just I guess we can start by talking about our first experience, what got us into it, and, anyone who wants to, Doug, maybe you have the most vivid memory of it, or Nathan, whoever.
I'll start. So, Ghostbusters, the movie, hit in 1984, which was a great year because that's the year I was born.
86 is better.
But 1984, so round about 1988, when I was about 4, 1989, 5, that's when I was really into Ghostbusters craze. The thing that got me into it, like so many of my generation, was the real Ghostbusters cartoon, which was syndicated for several years, and, of course, the amazing Kenner toy line. So that's really what drew me in. And then, of course, it was an easy jump from the cartoons and the action figures to the actual movies. And I can remember my parents renting the movie from Video Stop, Be Kind Rewind. And once that caught on, I can remember being so obsessed with Ghostbusters that it was one of those movies that I watched almost daily as a kid. Like, no joking, like every 2 or 3 days I watched it. So my mom and dad got tired of renting it, and somehow they found it on TV somewhere, and they recorded it on old school VHS. So that's really how I watched it mostly, was on the old school VHS recording. And so I can remember vividly as a kid playing with the toys, watching the movie constantly. There was a couple of Ghostbusters games, 1 and 2, that came out on the NES. Terrible games. They're really, really bad games, but I played them anyway because I was a kid and I loved them. And then 1989 was a great year too, because that's when Ghostbusters 2 came out. Yeah. And I know that a lot of people give it hate, but I love it. I think it's a great sequel. Mm-hmm. So that was hitting at just the right age for me. I can remember my parents taking me to go see Ghostbusters 2 in the theater. I actually went to Bowcatcher Cinemas over on
good old Bowcatcher,
across from the Asheville Mall on Tunnel Road. I can remember that vividly because every time you walked in there, your sneakers would stick to the floor. So that was a great experience. And then also at that time, they had like a promotional with Hardee's. Mm-hmm. And like you could get all these pack-in toy items like cups and these little sound makers and all these little things from Hardee's. And we had a Hardee's in Candler. And I can remember begging my parents, go to Hardee's, order something so I can get the Ghostbusters stuff. So 1 year for Halloween, I had the whole proton pack and trap. My grandmother made me a blue jumpsuit.
That sounds familiar.
Like, I had the whole setup. Like, Ghostbusters will forever be my jam because it was really the first franchise that I really got into. Of of course, there was Ninja Turtles, and then there was Star Wars after that, and other things, Thundercats. But Ghostbusters will always be like the original jam that got me into all of it.
Just for the record, Derek's office is wall to wall, top shelf Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah,
action figures, original, vintage, the Ecto 1. It's a beautifully made.
Still going
shrine.
for that firehouse.
Yes.
I have not procured a firehouse, but I've got the box. So funny story about that. A few years ago, I was rummaging around in my mom and dad's attic, and there, lo and behold, it was like Indiana Jones. There it was, a relic from the past. I didn't even know that they still had that thing, but my mom and dad kept the original Ghostbusters Firehouse box, and they put old Christmas trees in it, like Christmas decorations and stuff. So there it was, and I took the box. I was like, I'm leaving your Christmas tree, but I'm taking the box, Mom. So I've still got that box.
I can't believe that thing was still together.
I know. It's in actually pretty decent shape, so hopefully one day I can get a firehouse to go with the box. Anyway, life goals, right?
Yeah, right. I guess around the first time I probably saw it was probably around 91, 92. And I think the main reason I loved it so much was because of Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, because I grew up watching old SNL when they were on it. My parents taped 70s SNL back in the day. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up watching
back
them.
when SNL was actually funny.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why I loved it so much, because I couldn't get over how hilarious they were on Saturday Night Live. Mm-hmm. And I probably saw part 2 probably just right after that, probably very soon after that. I remember I probably would rent it from Stage Door.
Yeah.
On Patton Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody remembers that.
I do.
They had everything, video games, everything. But I love part 1, but honestly, I think part 2 is my favorite.
Oh, okay.
We talked about this on Halloween.
I love Ghostbusters too. I know it gets a lot of hate.
I don't see why it does.
I don't either. It's
I'm
great.
the same way.
I know there's just something about it. I think because they go through Christmas, and they get different jumpsuits.
The slime.
They talk about He-Man.
Up by 10. Yes.
And then they literally bring Statue of Liberty alive.
And control it with the NES Advantage controller.
Yes.
Come
that was
on,
the best
people.
part.
And there was something so
Which
awesome.
I have.
There was
Vintage, baby.
Something so awesome about Vigo, like the painting coming alive. I don't know. There was just something so awesome about that. But I don't know. I've always loved Ghostbusters. Unfortunately I had some of the toys, but I never got as far probably as Derek did with the toys.
Well, at the early 90s, the Kenner line was really starting to trail off. So it was getting harder to find that stuff. The Ghostbusters craze had kind of died down. So
I
totally understand that.
I remember finding, this is when you could find stuff cheap, like in Goodwills, honestly. I remember finding Ghostbusters figures in Goodwills, and I think that's one of the main reasons I had them, was because you could find them cheap in the dollar bins and stuff. And but I don't know. I've always loved Ghostbusters. And now I've actually, and all these guys know, but I've actually able to build almost a full-size Proton pack. And just, a couple weeks ago for Halloween, I was a Ghostbuster.
That is a work of genius, Nate. It really, because on Halloween, here I was DJing our church trunk or treat. I'm in a Starfleet uniform. It's like all ends of the nerd spectrum. Here I am dressed in a Starfleet uniform, and here you are in the navy blue Ghostbusters 2 outfit that Derek had mentioned, with your full proton pack and even
PKE
the
meter.
switch, which you makes that sound right there. He actually has that programmed in there, and then you even have the rubber gloves. And then that eyepiece, I don't know what it's called, but the
goggles.
The
Goggles,
okay, so
yeah.
they're just called.
Goggles.
Okay,
You've got a trap too. It's
Yeah,
a
I
dog.
even got a trap, and
You did.
actually it broke.
Oh.
It fell and broke.
Yeah, it
the
met
handle
its
broke off
demise.
of it, but I glued it back, and it's fine now.
I was wondering how your trap was,
It's brand new now again.
because that was kind of terrifying to watch.
But I mean, I even went as far as
it was.
I even went as far as actually getting a patch that said my last name on it. So I mean, that's how far I went with it, and I got the
it's full
Ghostbusters
scale.
2 on the jumpsuit, but I don't know. I have fun doing it. I
So
love
you're
it.
saying you're just waiting on your invite to Ghost Heads local chapter?
Maybe
That's the missing link. 'Cause,
that
like,
would be pretty awesome, actually.
that's full ghost head setup right there.
But yeah, that's pretty much my experience. I think it was because of SNL. That was
Okay.
Doug.
Oh, wait.
Doug-
Or I
Douglas.
can go.
Preston's
Preston?
eyeing me. I figured you'd let the old guy go last as somebody that wasn't wearing diapers when the movie come out.
How old were you in '84, Doug?
I was 9.
Oh, you were. That was
Whoa.
perfect
yeah,
for you,
perfect
man.
age, man.
It was in the theaters
Mm.
when I went and saw it. And I didn't get to watch a lot of SNL when I was younger, but I knew, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray from stuff you catch on TV, the Blues Brothers, when all that was going on. I just love them, and they're masterful comedians to my eye. They're actually funny. They don't have to rely on anything but their humor. So,
Original
yes.
work. Yeah.
And as far as the movie itself, it just the fact of it blows your mind. You start thinking about it, it's like, whoa, because you always, when you was a kid, you tell ghost stories,
Mm-hmm.
and they tapped into that and all the characters and just everything that went on. I still think the first is my favorite. I like the second one. I wasn't big on the villain in part 2.
Vigo.
Vigo, but I liked the movie. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
As far as him, I thought he could have been a little stronger. I don't think he stood up to the original.
Mhm.
I don't know. I just don't think he was. It didn't seem as fierce.
It wasn't as imposing as Gozer. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Devil dogs and all of that.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he had he had everything coming for him. He had to have a gatekeeper and a keymaster to let him out. You know, Vigo just hanging out in the painting on the wall. He just needed a little Carpathian kitten love.
It's not like sitting in your chair and all these arms are grabbing you. And, And
Exactly.
then the refrigerator.
Yeah.
and-
So when you're 9, right, and you're watching Ghostbusters
It's amazing.
1, there are some moments there as a 9-year-old that's pretty scary.
Oh yeah, the librarian. That's scary.
The librarian scene,
Yeah.
Dana's scene in her apartment where the hands come through the chair and
Yeah,
grab her.
Go home scared to open the refrigerator.
Yeah. Some of it obviously was cartoonish, like Slimer, and it had kind of a slapstick effect. But there were definitely moments as a kid, like, the taxi driver.
Taxi
that's
driver,
like
yeah.
a zombie. There were definitely some moments
And it
in
was
there where
it-
you were like,
Those practical effects have stood the test of time.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, see, I also felt like it wasn't like, even during the Slimer scenes, he was, gross and, kind of funny looking, but it was like serious at the same time. Like, you weren't like laughing in your head off about it. It was just serious when he was like chasing him and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one thing I liked about it, was the fact that it was serious but had a little bit of comedy in it as well.
I think it's like a fine wine. It's gotten better with age, because
Definitely.
there was so much as a kid I did not pick up on, like a lot of the humor.
Yeah.
The deadpan deliveries, some of the lines, which we're going to get to later on the podcast. But the more I watched it, it grew with me.
Yeah.
And when I got to my 20s, man, I really appreciated it because I could see the comedic genius coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And such a quotable movie, and it just resonated on so many levels.
And
Not just special effects, comedy, original storyline. I mean, you name it, it had it going on.
And so much of that wasn't scripted.
Oh, yeah.
So much
A
of
lot
that
it was
stuff wasn't
improvised.
scripted. Yeah.
Well, I was 2 when it came out. So I was.
You might have been in pull-ups.
I was
then.
still.
It's okay.
I might have been. I'd have to ask my parents about that. Although my mom swears my first words were Bob Barker, but that's
Remember to have your pets spayed and neutered.
yeah, that's another conversation.
Wrong,
Bob, wrong, Bobby.
So, but my earliest memory of seeing Ghostbusters, I want to say I may have been 6 or 7 years old, and I wasn't with you guys living here in Candler, but I remember with my dad being a pastor, we would sometimes visit other church members' houses and like go to there for dinner or whatever. And one of my earliest memories, in addition to VHS and having it recorded, I think off of HBO, this family had a Laserdisc player.
Whoa.
Yeah. Ooh. And that was
High
so
end.
That's my earliest memory of Ghostbusters. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what a laser disc is, just Google it.
Google
Look
it.
up.
Yeah.
It's a CD the size of a hubcap.
Yeah.
Essentially, yes.
And you have to flip it halfway through the movie. Which was the other thing I remember, because and it was in that same house that I also saw Empire Strikes Back for maybe not the first time, but that's another one of my earliest memories of Empire Strikes Back in the same house. But anyway, with Ghostbusters, I remember, they'd pop in the laser disc, and I mean, you had to put your finger through the middle just to get a grip on the thing.
Yeah, it had some weight to it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It was, and even
It was
the
like
player,
those old time records, like the really old records.
The
that
brittle
were-
ones,
Yeah,
not the vinyl
thick.
ones, but the
It was like the really thick
Yeah.
ones. That's what it was, really heavy, like those.
and also the player itself, when you started playing that thing and it was spinning in there, you could hear it. It was
yeah.
loud. And like it was like an A10 firing its minigun, And
kids today will never know.
no,
No.
never appreciate it.
Well,
So,
I would
yeah.
actually like to have that laser disc. Truthfully, like,
That would be
I would
awesome.
actually like to have
We
that
put
right
that
now.
in Derek's office
In
with all
that
his other
slip
stuff.
cover and
Yes.
everything with it. That
Yeah.
would be awesome.
So that was one of my earliest memories, and I know all of y'all were talking about some things that were already going through my head about how when I first saw it, there were some parts that seemed a little scary, semi-terrifying, like the library scene. But then I also remember too, as like you, Derek, when I got into my 20s and stuff and I started rewatching it, there were tons of things that I picked up on that I was never aware of before, and how some of those subtle one-liners, what they imply and how it is quotable, but those were things that I picked up much later on. But those are my earliest memories of it.
Sweet. So
And I was going to say, I just realized too, with Ghostbusters 2, I also am with you guys. Like, I don't understand any bad criticism about the movie. I remember being in second grade when it came out, I think in '89. And my earliest memory of Ghostbusters 2, we never saw it in theaters, but where I lived in San Antonio at the time, and the grocery store in San Antonio, or in that part of Texas, is HEB. And that's like the initials of the founder of the store. So we would always call it the Hebe. And the Hebe was always classified by where in the neighborhood it was. It could be the ghetto Hebe. It could be the one in Waco is called the Taj Mahib because of how huge and big it is,
Clever.
all the different Hebes. So anyway, with this HEB store at the time, when you first go in the store, there was a room with a big screen TV. Now, this would never fly today. You would leave your kid in there to watch the big screen TV
my.
while you go shop. Now, my parents never did this they always had me with them, but you could drop your kid off in that room, big screen TV. They always had some kid semi-appropriate movie on there. You could go get your groceries. Once you came through the checkout line, you grab your kid and go home.
Don't forget the
forget
kid.
your kid.
And so my mom was kind enough one day to my mom was kind enough one day to walk in there with me, and I remember watching Ghostbusters 2 for a few minutes or so, and then walking off with my mom to get our groceries, and then I want to say not long after that we rented it and watched it at home, and I remember freaking out seeing the Nintendo controller, the joystick, and all.
I love that scene where, it's kind of toward the end where they're moving to the art museum and they have all these appearances of the the spirits and the dead and everything, and the Titanic shows up.
Oh, yeah.
All
Yeah.
the people getting off the Titanic. That's such a great scene. I mean,
Yeah.
people hate
Better
on
late than never.
Ghostbusters too, but you got to realize the bar was put so high for original Ghostbusters. I mean, it's very, very hard to capture lightning in a bottle twice.
Well, and you also got to remember it was 5 years. I mean, literally
Yeah.
5 years later in real life.
Yeah.
So Ghostbusters has probably died down.
Yeah.
By then.
I love Ghostbusters too. I love the slime, the river of slime.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with Vigo. I thought Vigo was pretty cool. Milos is really funny. You like the buzzing of flies to Vigo?
Yes, the joyfulness is over.
There he is. Loved Ecto 2.
Yeah.
The difference
With the new
changes that they
lights.
made from the Ecto 1 to the Ecto 2. Loved all that.
I thought the navy blue suits were cool.
Yeah, the slime blowers. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like as a kid, and that was such a perfect tie-in with what Kenner was doing with the toy line. Like every kid loves slime. So if you were a kid like I was at that time, playing with the toys, you had the ectoplasm, you were pouring it on your figures and on your monsters, and then you saw it in the movie, and it was just hitting, man. It was really cool stuff. And
just the message of the positive energy.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just cool, you know?
mm-hmm.
Well, see, what I always thought was funny about the second one was the fact that, I mean, this was clearly a, what am I trying to say? Like they did the number 2 on all the patches, and even the sign said number 2. And you got to think, why are they doing number 2? What does that mean? Like in the movie, well, people have got to be asking, what does number 2 mean? Why are you saying number 2? I don't know. I always thought that was so funny, but I mean, it's awesome at the same time. It's clearly for us. But I don't know. I just thought that was funny. They would put a number 2 in all the ghosts. So, I don't know. I just thought it was funny.
Big Easter egg.
Yeah.
Cool deal. And we got to see Louis Tully strap up in that movie too.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
a
that was-
Ghostbuster.
I forgot about that.
Well, and there's even that deleted scene where he's trying to fight Slimer.
That's right.
With
Yeah,
a
that's a
proton pack.
great deleted scene.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, go on YouTube, check out Ghostbusters 2 deleted scene. It didn't make it in the theatrical cut, but there's a scene where Tully and Slimer are going back and forth. He's trying to capture Slimer.
Yeah.
It's a really cool scene, and it's not very long, a couple minutes. I wish they would have
they're-
kept it in the original.
I never knew
cut.
this.
Yeah, they're in the firehouse.
You didn't know?
No.
Oh, it's cool.
No,
It's a
I
cool
did not
scene.
know.
Because remember that one scene where Slimer's, I think he's eating their sandwich or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And then Tully's like, "What's that smell?" And then he flips over the couch. That was supposed to have been right where that.
I love the beginning scene in Ghostbusters 2 with the courtroom. Where the Ghostbusters are on trial.
Yes.
Scaleri
The
brothers.
Scaleri
I
brothers
gave him
were
the chair.
Awesome.
Yeah.
They were just
Just tell him you don't believe
They
in
were
him.
awesome. Yeah, they definitely kind of up their special effects.
those
when
were
moved
they were
into
some of the best
Ghostbusters 2.
ghosts.
Yeah, that was
out
cool.
of any of them.
Yeah, sweet. Well, let's talk about some other things Ghostbusters related. Let's give you some basics and some fun facts, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite quotes as well. So, Ghostbusters 1, directed and produced by Ivan Reitman, and of course written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. Now, Ivan Reitman's son, Jason Reitman, has taken the directorial helm for Ghostbusters Afterlife. So it's kind of a family deal.
Which we will be seeing in 4 hours.
Oh, yes.
Yay.
The countdown is on. So, of course, Ivan Reitman worked a lot with the SNL crowd on some other comedic movies.
And Jason was even in part 2.
That's true. Yeah, Jason
He was
Reitman
the
in
one that
Ghostbusters
said,
too.
Was it the He-Man thing?
He was at the birthday party.
was the one-
Oh,
Yeah,
he was a
at the birthday
kid.
party.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
He-Man.
Of course, Ivan Reitman, Dan Aykroyd is still alive. Harold Ramis died a few years ago, 2014 maybe. Y'all can,
That
y'all
sounds
can-
about right,
Y'all can
yeah.
fact check me.
No, that sounds right.
Yeah. Okay, so star-studded cast, right? Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis. I mean, comedic gold, like Doug was saying, geniuses in their own right. Sigourney Weaver, also who was blowing up in the 80s with Alien and Aliens, right? Rick Moranis, before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yep.
Before, yeah.
And
as
around
Louis
the
Tully.
time of Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah. Annie Potts, she played Janine.
Yep.
And I think she reprises her role in the next Ghostbusters Afterlife. I don't know, but I think
Yeah, she's in one of the
think she's
trailers.
in
Oh,
one of the
awesome.
trailers.
She's a caretaker
Yeah.
of the house.
We got Ernie Hudson,
Okay.
who's Winston Zeddemore, and honestly, I can't remember him being in any other movie besides Ghostbusters 1
He was
and
in
2.
Congo. I do know that.
Congo!
He was in Congo.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
haven't thought about that movie in a long time.
That's another Tim Curry. I know that.
Whoa, we could do a whole podcast on movies in the 90s.
of baseballs.
Michael Crichton movies that were based on the books.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was a thing in the 90s, right?
yeah, it
Beginning
was.
with Jurassic Park. You had
Jurassic
Jurassic Park,
Park.
Sphere. You had Congo,
Yeah.
Timeline. Oh my
Dude,
gosh.
Congo had a serious PR team behind them. You remember where they
I
played that
remember
up?
the
was
Congo
huge.
toys.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Do
yeah.
you
Yep.
remember the Congo?
Was it Kenner that did them?
Yes.
Yeah, Kenner. Yeah. Well, he was. Ernie
my
Hudson was
gosh.
also in. I remember him from.
That is so funny. Now, when you go back and watch Congo today, oh my gosh, it's so
Oh.
cringeworthy.
I can't. I haven't watched it probably since I was
Yeah.
a kid. But Ernie Hudson. He was also in. I remember him from The Crow. He was the main cop
Okay.
in The Crow.
Oh, okay.
And I guess you'd almost call him like a B movie because he's
Yeah.
played in so many movies, but you can't really name the movies he's
Yeah.
been in.
All right, let me throw out another actor who's in the movie. William Atherton. He played Walter Peck.
Oh, yeah,
He was
from
the-
Die
he was the-
Hard.
Yes, he was the
Yeah.
reporter
Yeah.
in Die Hard.
He's also in
Yeah.
Die Hard.
Yeah.
He basically plays the same
does.
character in both movies. Like
Yeah,
just
he
a real
does.
hard case.
The thorn in your side.
Yes. So
Quotations on his last name, by the way.
huge.
That's what he always played.
Yeah, huge cast there. Casting was perfect. And like Doug was saying, even though they had a script, I know a lot of it was improv, especially when you're dealing with Bill Murray. So release date, June 8th, 1984. That's also Ghostbusters Day in the fandom world. So you see that come around every year. Listen to the budget for this movie, which in 1984 was probably a lot. $25 to $30 million budget. But listen to what it raked in. This is just Ghostbusters 1. $295.2 million.
Yeah.
That's why they made a sequel, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge return. And of course, one big reason why Ghostbusters was so popular was the theme song written by Ray Parker Jr. I mean, everybody knows that song. It's played on repeat around Halloween time, basically the whole month of October. I mean, I've got the original soundtrack. I play it all the time. My kids love it. I mean, it's like a generational thing. I get to hand it down to my kids. They love the song.
Yeah, it's definitely something you can dance to.
Yeah.
Too. I mean,
When you even see it in a lot of modern video game adaptations like Rock Band or Just Dance.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere.
By the way, that song hit #1 on Billboard in 1984. So that was really a cultural phenomenon.
Ray
I mean,
Parker Jr.
Yeah. It wasn't on the level of Star Wars, like total cultural takeover, but there for a few years, I mean, it was big. It was pretty huge. The whole Ghostbusters freight train that blew through. All right, let's talk about fun facts. Maybe some of you guys don't know these. I actually learned a lot as I was looking some of these up. Ghostbusters was the second highest grossing film in 1984. Now, 1984 was a huge year for movies. You want to know what the highest grossing film that year was? I'll just give you the theme song. Dun, 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 dun,
Beverly
dun, dun,
Hills
dun, dun.
Cop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, wow.
Beverly Hills Cop was the highest grossing film that year. But listen to what else also came out that year, what Ghostbusters was up against in terms of box office. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Huge one.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the whole reason we've got PG-13.
Oh, yeah, because of the heart.
Because
Yep.
of Temple of Doom. Karate Kid.
Wow, that's right.
Gremlins. Footloose, Romancing the Stone, and I know you know this, Preston, Star Trek 3.
Yeah.
All that came out in
Why I
1984.
love the 80s.
Think about that summer
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
How you would go broke going to the movies. I mean, my goodness, look at that lineup. That's
Back
amazing.
to the Future was the next summer. Come on.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
So that's what was going on in 1984.
And Goonies would have been the next year, too.
Oh, yeah.
85. That.
you
85,
guys. So, how did Ghostbusters get written? Well, as it turns out, Dan Aykroyd is a huge believer in all things paranormal.
Yep.
So, apparently, from what I've read of Dan Aykroyd, he comes from a family of what they claim to be clairvoyants and spiritualists, and he is openly a believer in ghosts and UFOs and interdimensional beings and all of those kinds of things. I've read that his father wrote a book called The History of Ghosts. So that's kind of what's handed down as his family heritage. Listen to this. Dan Aykroyd also claims that his grandfather invented a radio that could communicate with ghosts.
Nice.
So writing the script for Ghostbusters wasn't much of a stretch of imagination for him. So he and Harold Ramis definitely struck gold on that. We talked a little bit about Slimer, and I know we've talked with our own group about this in previous meetings, but the inspiration for Slimer came from Jim Belushi, right?
John Belushi.
John Belushi.
John
I'm
Belushi.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Close
John
enough.
Belushi.
It's close.
It's kind of.
So he is the inspiration for that. If you've ever seen Animal House, the food fight scene in the cafeteria and all that.
Well, they all were really good friends too.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, all
SNL crew.
SNL, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So an interesting thing too, Slimer isn't ever referred to as Slimer in the movie.
Yeah.
He's called the Disgusting Little Blob by Peter Venkman. He isn't called Slimer until the cartoon series, The Real Ghostbusters, which comes out later in '86. That's when they kind of geared that more toward kids, and
Yeah.
Slimer ends up becoming kind of like the Ghostbusters pet.
Isn't that kind of funny that they decided to make a cartoon of a movie that was 2 years old? It's, I don't know. I find that kind of. I don't think that would work now, but back then I find that kind of funny that they would wait 2 years to make a cartoon.
So, check this out. According to one website, filmmakers designed the Slimer puppet and his face off of Belushi. So they used his features as kind of the mold. So
How funny.
yeah. One thing that's often surrounded in the Ghostbusters lore is all of the people who were looked at to play certain parts, but they had a lot of casting changes. So listen to this. Eddie Murphy was set to appear in the film. He was also of SNL at that time. But he was off doing another role, which we've already mentioned, Beverly Hills Cop. And I didn't know this, but you know who else was tapped to play one of the parts in the movie was John Candy.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yep.
Oh, no way.
John Candy of Uncle Buck
Yep.
and Cool Runnings.
Yep.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Great Outdoors.
Yes.
Home Alone.
Canadian Bacon.
Yeah.
So many great
Wow.
hits. They were going to get John Candy to play the role of Louis Tully. Of course, Candy, he turned it down, and that's when they brought in Rick Moranis instead. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That is.
The Marshmallow Man explosion. So at the end of the movie, Ghostbusters 1, right, they destroy the Destroyer, choose the form of the Destroyer, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. At the end, when they cross the streams and they blow him up, you know, they have the close-up of people being doused in all of the white goo. It's not marshmallows, it's actually shaving cream.
Shaving cream. Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, like,
Oh, cool.
they got like the hundreds of gallons of shaving cream. That's a lot of Barbasol. They got all that, and they dumped it on people. So let's talk a little bit about the theme song. I thought this was really interesting. I know we've touched on it a little bit, but so Ray Parker Jr. was not the original tap for that. They actually talked to Lindsey Buckingham, first of all, of Fleetwood Mac to do the song, and he turned it down. He didn't want to do it because he thought it was too cheesy. So he ended up not making it, and then they got Ray Parker Jr. to do it. And the story goes, if you watch the Netflix documentary on the movies that made us, if you go watch that, they have one on Ghostbusters, and they talk to Ray Parker about how he was inspired to write.
Yeah, what's that
He
recently?
only had like 3 or 4 days to write the music
Yeah.
because they were run up to a deadline. So he had to write the lyrics, compose the music and everything. And he was really having a hard time. He said he just couldn't. He had writer's block and all of that, and he couldn't do it. And he couldn't figure out how in the world am I going to get the word Ghostbusters into this song because it's just a long word anyway. So he said he was staying up late one night, and you know when you're up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, you get all the crazy infomercials and all of the local kooks and public TV and all of that. Of course, back in the 80s, it was a lot more of that than there is today. But
wait, there's more.
yeah. So he said he was watching that, and he noticed this really cheesy commercial come up for a local business that was an extermination business, and it kind of paired nicely with ghost extermination, and they had like a cheesy jingle that went along with it, and so that's where he got the inspiration to write Ghostbusters. It's supposed to be a jingle for the the business, and so that's kind of what gave him the impetus to write it. Kind of a pseudo advertising.
Wow.
So pretty neat there, but there actually was a lawsuit about the song. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but Huey Lewis in the News.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned Back to the Future, Doug.
Yes.
Power of Love,
Oh yeah.
1985. Okay,
Yes.
Huey
Yep.
Lewis in the News. So there was a legal battle over the Ghostbusters song once it blew up because Huey Lewis charged Ray Parker for plagiarizing part of the song, the tune of the song.
Wow.
So listen to this. The song became a huge hit, and then Huey Lewis filed a lawsuit claiming that the background music from Ghostbusters theme was a ripoff of one of his songs, I Need a Different Drug, which I haven't heard that song. I need to go listen to it, but Huey Lewis was claiming that Ray Parker ripped that off to write, and they settled. So they had to pay a lot of money.
That happens
for
more
that.
than people realize.
Yeah.
Come on,
Music
Doug.
lawsuits.
Ice,
that.
ice, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yep,
Yeah.
yep. That's another one.
Yeah. So,
It's just that little
Oh, I
change.
mean pressure.
by the way, if we're speaking of music, Ghostbusters 1 and 2 had some great songs that went along with not just the Ray Parker song, but if you go to Ghostbusters 2, Bobby Brown,
Yeah.
On Our Own, which in 1989, Bobby Brown was hot stuff.
Yeah.
Right. That song's awesome. I love that song. The Run DMC had a Ghostbusters rap that was also in Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah,
And
I mean
that's-
they had
that's
some of
pretty
the
hot.
They had some of the best music for the '80s, right there. I mean, and
Yeah.
every time you listen to it, it reminds you of the '80s.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
in the scene where they slime down the Statue of Liberty and they turn on the PA system, the Higher and Higher song.
Yeah.
I don't know who wrote that, but just some great tunes that they connected in with the movie to really push it, and that's really all.
And that
I know.
song was
Jackie
a
Wilson?
remake.
Yeah.
Because I think the original Higher and Higher was written sometime back in the 50s or 60s maybe, and then that 89 version that we hear in Ghostbusters 2 is a repurposed version. But yeah, I can't remember what group did it.
Coolness. So we've already talked about what makes the movie so iconic. Is there anything that we missed out on that maybe you guys wanted to mention that really stuck with you? To me, all of it is lightning in a bottle. I mean, it hit at the right time. They had a great cast. The story was so unique. The special effects were cool. The music was popping. I mean, it just had so many things going for it. The thing that I love most about it is it's a totally original concept. Like so many movies today are a reboot, or they're a derivative of some book, or it's something that's been reheated and rehashed and microwaved over again. We've already seen it. But I felt like with Ghostbusters, one thing that is so cool about it is it was totally unique.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it out there. And to me, that's what is so endearing about it.
Well, I was just going to add a little bit to the music. The outside of the pop tunes that were spread throughout both movies, the score was composed by a guy named Elmer Bernstein, and he had done previous Reitman films. So just like with many other directors we've talked about in other podcasts where they have their go-to guy, the Reitman or Elmer Bernstein is Reitman's go-to guy. And Reitman did Trading Places, if y'all ever saw that, the Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
classic.
hey,
right
how'd
there.
y'all make out today? And he also did Airplane, and he also scored Blues Brothers. And there's this one instrument where throughout the movie, throughout the first Ghostbusters movie, you'll probably hear that creepy kind of
yeah.
theme.
Oh, yeah.
And now when we were talking about Loki, I had mentioned the theremin. the
Oh, yeah.
electronic,
Yes.
that you don't
Did they use
touch.
a theremin in this?
Well, it's something similar. It's called, and I tried pronouncing this. It's a French pronunciation. I think it's called the en martenant is how you.
Oui, oui.
It's spelled. It's spelled ONDE.
Martenant.
Yeah, martenant. It's ONDES, and then the second word is MARTENOT.
It sings the language
It's
of love.
loosely, it's loosely translated as musical waves. Now, the instrument itself, it sounds a lot like a theremin, and it's used similar to a theremin. But you have a keyboard, piano keyboard on there, where you play the notes on there. But there's also this rod that is in front of the keyboard that you run this ring back and forth. And that's how you can get some of those bendy kind of theremin sounds. So
Kind of the spooky sounds.
exactly. So when you hear those types of sounds throughout the movie within the music, the chances are it's the en maintenant that's making that sound.
Interesting.
And it's meant to produce a very eerie kind of sound effect. So.
Sweetness.
It worked.
So one of the things that we all love about Ghostbusters is it's so quotable. I mean, almost the whole movie, I've memorized because I've watched it so much. But that movie is just laden with so many great quotes, and I know Preston's got some sound bites here. But we're just gonna go through and remind you if you've forgotten some of the brilliant quotes in here. I love when they get to the library in the very beginning of the movie, and they're interviewing the librarian. And he asked her, he says, have you or any other member of your family been diagnosed as schizophrenic or mentally incompetent? And she says, well, my uncle thought he was St. Jerome.
Well, that classifies.
He goes, I'd say that's a big yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love when they get down in the basement and of course, they see all the creepy things happening there, and the books are stacked.
Oh, yeah.
And Ray says, symmetrical book stacking, just like the Philadelphia mass turbulence of 1947.
Yeah.
And then Bateman's like, yeah, no human being would stack books like that, right?
Well, one of my favorite lines, Venkman says, he says, back off, I'm a scientist.
Back off, man, I'm a scientist.
I mean, I love that.
Yeah, and I've used that too, oftentimes with like my wife, like we'll be having a discussion, but back off, I'm a scientist. She knows what I'm getting at there.
Yeah.
But that's always a great retort when someone's like pushing against your idea. Back off, man.
Or how about, let me know when you get to the 20th floor,
Yeah,
because I'm going to throw up.
yeah, that's at the end where they're going all the way.
They're going up the
Gozer
stairs.
building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Egon's got a lot of great lines. I'm always serious. And then Preston's favorite. Go ahead,
Oh,
buddy.
here we go. My favorite.
Egon, this reminds me of the time you tried to drill a hole through your head. Remember that?
That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me.
And then, of course, Egon was a great collector.
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
There you go.
The part where he says that would have worked. It would have worked if you hadn't stopped me. That was improvised right there.
I'm sure. Yeah.
That wasn't even in the script at all.
When I also heard too that the scene fast forwarding when Louis Tully is in his apartment and it's the big party and he has all those clients there.
Yeah. Who brought the dog?
Yeah, well, and all that stuff that he's explaining beforehand about tax write-off and I invite clients. Apparently, all that was improvised too.
That's amazing that
Yeah.
he could just do that off the cuff.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Of course, the great catchphrase, "We're ready to believe you." It's so kind of corny and like just infomercially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's actually printed or painted on the side of the Ecto. I know it's at least
it is
on Ecto 2. But anyway, that's we're ready to believe you. That's good. What else did we talk about that were great quotes?
What are you supposed to be, some kind of a cosmonaut?
No, we're exterminators. Somebody saw a cockroach up on 12.
That's got to be some cockroach.
Bite your head off, man.
Yeah, that's when they're at the Sedgwick Hotel, right?
Yeah, they first
Yep.
walk into the
Yep.
elevator.
That's the
And they
first
go,
one.
It's like-
oh man, when they go into the ballroom to capture
Yes.
Slimer, and Bill Murray, I've always wanted to do this, and he grabs hold of the tablecloth. The flowers are still standing. And of course, that's when they're in there trying to capture Slimer.
Nice shooting, Tex.
Nice shooting, Tex. And we learn about the streams. Don't cross the streams. It would be very bad.
It could be bad.
Yeah. Total positron reversal.
Egon Pinkman, shorten your stream. I don't want my face burned off.
Yeah. I love the scene in the firehouse where Winston is coming on board and he's being interviewed for the job, and Janine asks him, "Do you believe in UFOs, astral projections, mental telepathy, ESP, clairvoyance, spirit photography, kinetic movement, full trance mediums, the Loch Ness monster, and the theory of Atlantis?" And he says, "If there's a steady paycheck, I'll believe anything you tell me."
Great, you're hired.
That had to be written by Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way that wasn't written by Dan
that's
Aykroyd.
good stuff.
Well, you know the whole. I was just reading about this that they didn't actually have a normal trailer for this movie before they actually premiered it. So when you would actually go in the movies and see trailers, the only trailer it had was their commercial. That was the trailer.
Oh, really?
They actually posted a 1-800 number in the trailer, and you could call.
It seemed
them.
like they mentioned that in the Netflix documentary. They had a bunch of people calling in for that thing.
Yeah, because I think in the movie it says 555.
Yeah,
but they changed it on the trailer to the 1-800 number you could call. But they said that was the only trailer they had was just the commercial.
How funny!
So y'all remember the scene when
Just one of our little
Lewis
toys.
is possessed by one of the Gozer underlings, and they have that colander device on top. They're like reading his brain waves.
The strainer.
Yeah, and so Lewis has this great moment there where he spouts off about all of the Gozer mythology about how they're going to be destroyed. I think Preston's got that.
This is also a shout out to my friend Brandon Archer from Baylor University. He loved quoting this during band rehearsal. Here we go.
Vince, you said before you were waiting for a sign. What sign are you waiting for?
Gozer the Traveler. He will come in one of the pre-chosen forms. During the rectification of the Voldrani, the Traveler came as a large and moving torb. Then, during the third reconciliation of the last of the McKettrick supplicants, they chose a new form for him, that of a giant slore. Many Shubs and Zools knew what it was to be roasted in the depths of the slore that day, I can tell you.
I always wondered what a slore was, and you can actually find out if you play the Ghostbusters game that was recently released. I know it's on Nintendo Switch because I've got it, and I think it's on Xbox. And,
it's on
and
Xbox and PlayStation. Yeah.
You can download it. It's pretty cheap now, maybe about $20. But you actually fight a slore later on in the game. And so if you want to know what a slore is, go play the video. Which the game is really good.
It's
too.
really good.
The game is awesome.
Well, it helped the fact that they actually brought everybody back to. It's like they made a third movie.
Yeah.
When they made that game.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention the one thing I loved about Ghostbusters 2 was the different ghosts, like the crazy ghosts they had in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially the one scene I'm thinking when the slime first starts sliming the city basically, and everybody's running out of that movie theater, and you see that. I don't know. He's got like 4 arms, and he's got 4 or 5 eyes. It's just
kind of
crazy.
reminded me of the Rancor from Return of the Jedi.
Well, and see, I almost feel like they got some influence maybe from the cartoon as well, because the cartoon had some crazy ghosts in it, not human ghosts, but it was just crazy weird monster ghosts, and I almost feel like maybe they got some influence from it for the movie. But that's another thing I loved about the second was the crazy ghosts in it.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is at the very end after they save everybody, and it's Egon talking to Lewis, and he's like, "Oh, I think we're going to need a sample of your brain tissue."
Yeah. That will.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, before that, Ray comes up to him and he says, "Hey, Mr. Tully, you're a most fortunate individual. You have been a participant in the biggest interdimensional crossroads of the Tunguska Blast of 1909." It's actually that's a misprint. It should be 1908. But anyway, great line. I also love the scene when they're in the judges' quarters. And they're trying to convince the mayor to let him out of jail because he doesn't have a clue of what all they're facing. Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies, rivers and seas boiling, 40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
Dogs and cats living together.
Yeah, human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Ray, when someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
Am I supposed to get on the radio and tell everybody in New York to be nice to each other?
Oh, yeah.
one of my favorite scenes.
We could just quote the whole movie, guys.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite scenes in the first one is when Egon is talking to Venkman when they figure out like who the Keymaster is and everything. Tully keeps on handing him.
Oh yeah,
he keeps on handing him objects.
Yeah.
He's like, "Thank you, thank you." It's so funny.
Speaking of that,
that was
subject-
probably ad lib too.
Should I
it
have
had
some
to have
coffee?
been.
Yes, have some.
Speaking of which,
Do
aren't one of y'all in possession of Tobin's spirit guide, Nathan? Nudge, nudge.
Possibly.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Well, you're gonna have to
and-
explain what is Tobin's spirit guide.
It is basically just a breakdown of all the ghosts and monsters that
Specters and
specters
such.
that the Ghostbusters
free floating
have
vapors.
either encountered or
Classified
caught.
free roaming vapor.
Yes, and it's really awesome. It goes. I mean, it literally goes through from the movies to the cartoon, probably even Extreme Ghostbusters. I mean, everything. It has every ghost possible in it, and it breaks down what the history of where that ghost came from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it has everybody from Slimer to Vigo to.
So just so everybody knows, all of the mythology, like the Zool stuff and the Sumerians and all that's invented. I know that.
Yeah.
Maybe there might be somebody out there who might think that there's actually history behind it, but
Including the rectification of the Valdrana.
yeah, like all that's made up. Because the reason I say that is because when I was in 9th grade, I had a history class, world history class, and one of the first civilizations we learned about was the Sumerians. My only exposure at that time in my life to the Sumerians was Zool and Gozer.
One of the ancient
And
Sumerians.
Conan the Barbarian.
And after class, I was kind of embarrassed, but I went up to the teacher. I was like, did the Sumerians actually worship a deity named Zool? Gozer? And he's like, you've been watching Ghostbusters. He didn't make fun of me
but
or
that's
anything.
great that he knew that.
Yeah,
though.
he didn't make fun
Yeah.
of me or anything, but he's like, no, that wasn't their main god, but they actually had a different deity that they.
Okay, guys. Shamefully, I have to admit that in this group we haven't really mentioned the number one character in Ghostbusters.
Stay Puft.
No, the Ecto One.
Mm.
Oh, that is a staple in 1, 2, and in Afterlife. That was the whole tease. All you had to do was see that sheet come back, just looking. You instantly knew it was a '59 Cadillac hearse.
Yeah, it's impossible to talk about the movie without.
Well, I mean, it goes
Giving
with like
Ecto love.
the DeLorean from Back to the Future, the
Batmobile.
Batmobile. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes
Knight
through
Rider.
all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there with it.
Yeah, and there are lots of huge Ghostbusters fans who will trick out their own vehicles, even if they can't get a '59 ambulance.
Oh yeah.
They'll literally get a hearse, just like a brand new hearse, and
I've seen people like take their Prius,
Yeah.
and trick it out like it's a Ghostbusters vehicle.
I'd like
I mean,
to see that.
I've seen trucks and everything put Ghostbusters stuff
I mean,
on
you
it.
can't talk. You can't talk things. You can't mention Star Trek without bringing up the Enterprise.
Enterprise,
You
right.
Well,
know,
Doug, that's what it was funny. You
Or the
mentioned
Millennium
another.
Falcon and Star
Yeah.
Wars.
Yeah, like you mentioned again, like today with Ghostbusters, a vehicular character, and I remember, you'd mentioned when we've talked about Star Trek about the Enterprise being a character.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's a lot of us recognize that too. Like you can't have it without the vehicular character of the ship that takes you,
And
or the car, or
The
whatever.
sound of that siren is so unique. Like
That's
when you hear
another
the
thing.
siren, you
Yeah.
know exactly what it goes with.
you just want to turn around and see them coming around the corner.
Yeah.
And see, I remember being a kid, seeing it on Laserdisc, and that was one of the first things that really stuck out to me was that unique siren sound.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Would you guys say it's like a European siren sound?
Oh man, that's
Or-
a
I don't know if
good
they
question.
completely invented that sound for the movie, or I don't know. But to me, it's totally unique. It doesn't sound like
Yeah.
a regular ambulance or fire.
It sounds kind of almost like it almost sounds like a weakened fire truck siren that they've done something to, or it's
Yeah.
purposely older, like
That
the
would be
old
a deep
hand
cut
crank.
to-
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would.
Either way, it's one of those sounds
dig
when
that
you
up.
hear it, boom, you identify it.
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's the Ecto One, no doubt.
Cool. So let's pivot now, and we'll talk about some of the biblical connections. Now you may think, gosh, a movie like Ghostbusters, how in the world could that connect in any way to spirituality or the Bible? But actually, there's a whole lot there that scratches the surface that you can then lead into other discussions. So one big thing that the whole Ghostbusters realm is built on is occultism. And of course, the Bible has a lot to say about the subject of occultism. So when I say occultism, what do I mean by that? I mean, I'm talking about like witchcraft, sorcery, astrology, not astronomy, but astrology, that is determining the future based on signs of stars and movements of planets, horoscopes, necromancy or seances, those kinds of
Tarot
things.
cards.
Yeah, all that's occultic. So obviously the Bible would roundly condemn all of that because behind all of that, there is a spiritual world. And Ghostbusters is right in that it taps into the spiritual reality that is behind the material world that we see. It's not ghoulish or it's not disembodied spirits the way that it's portrayed in the movie, but in the Bible, there is definitely a spiritual realm of invisible creatures that have just as much reality as you and I, but they're angels and demons. And so angels would be the servants of God who carry about his business, and then the fallen angels, or the demons as they're called, they're the ones who possess people and torment people. And so in the movie, we see a lot of that cross over. Of course, Dana's character, Sigourney Weaver, and Rick Moranis' character, they get possessed, which if you read the New Testament, there's all kinds of demonic possession happening as Jesus is doing his ministry on the earth, and he's casting out demons and all of that. So the whole possession thing is total reality. Doug can back me up on this. We've been to Honduras on some mission trips, and I believe I've actually witnessed true demonic possession. In some,
very creepy in real life.
And the real life stuff is way creepier than any Hollywood movie could ever get toward. So all of that spiritual backdrop is there in the movie. It's of course Hollywoodized and sensationalized, but if you study the Bible, I mean, it's apparent that there is a spiritual reality between the demonic world and the angelic world, good and evil, light and dark, and possession, like I talked about. If you want an example of that, go to Mark chapter 5, where we read the story of the Gennesaret demoniac who is actually living in a graveyard. He's possessed by a legion of demons, which is hundreds and hundreds of demons. Jesus asks the name of the demon, and he tells him his name is Legion. And, of course, Jesus ends up casting out those demons and putting them in a herd of swine. But so all that's there, of course, and it's interesting that, you can have that discussion, and you can actually use Ghostbusters as a way to talk to people about those kinds of realities. In fact, when my son, he's getting to the age where he can kind of watch it and enjoy it, and he asked me questions about, like, hey, Daddy, are there really ghosts? And, like, hey, this is kind of scary. Is this real? And so it was a good time for me to talk to him about, angels and demons, and hey, here's what the Bible says, and yes, there is real evil in the world, and so all that. You guys want to weigh in on any of that?
Well, Derek, I was going to ask you, in any of your sermons, have you ever mentioned Ghostbusters?
I don't think so. Last week, I did pull a quote from Star Wars and throw it.
Yo, Nathan knows.
You got the Indiana Jones thrown in there, too. You mentioned Temple of Doom.
I did mention that. Yeah.
You did a Walking Dead sermon. I mean, years ago.
The title of the message was The Walking Dead.
Yeah, to be clear. But what was cool is you were able to take an element, like not just the title, but just the elements from Walking Dead, and they fit like a glove into that sermon, which I thought was
that was
really
on
cool.
Ephesians 2.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember that message.
So now that
believe
you've said that, it's coming.
Oh, how could I forget?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, but maybe I can figure out a way to throw it in there.
Now, if anybody can. I know
on that subject of talking about angels, demons, or even ghosts or the paranormal, the first thing that pops into my head is the Asheville area. Anyone listening, we live near Asheville, North Carolina, and
harmonic convergence zone.
Yeah, and
what I've been told.
And now I actually do have, because it actually is a really cool book. The book Haunted Asheville, which is written by one of the local, paranormal investigators or whoever, but it just goes into the stories, like the pink lady from the Grove Park Inn,
Brown Mountain Lights,
and then the bridge I
Was it
forget.
Helen's Bridge?
Helen's Bridge.
Yeah.
And then there's one from downtown where
You haven't
one of
ever
the-
been there.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah,
old
Helen-
enough to know me.
Helen's Bridge always, honestly,
Yeah.
it always scared
Yeah.
me when I was a kid.
And what's funny is my wife and I actually did one of those ghost tours from Asheville a couple of years ago on Halloween where
You can do one in Charleston too.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've done,
I did the
we've
one
done
in Charleston.
That's
and it was led now and I have to give these
One at
guys
midnight.
credit. While the guys that led the tour, they were upfront with us. They said that they are paranormal investigators and they really do believe in what they are looking for. But the cool thing was on the tour, they only gave us facts and background stories. They did not once try to impose anything, if that makes sense,
Oh, yeah.
on us. And that's what made the tour so cool. And it was a really neat learning experience. Like
Left it
we
to your
walked-
own imagination.
that and you learn a lot about the downtown area and the history behind it and some of the crazy stories of like what y'all were describing with how seeing a demon possessed person in real life is nothing like in the movies. Some of the stories these guys were talking about of some of these occurrences reminded me of y'all's comments about that, about how that's not something you would see in a movie.
So
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, who knows? They could be a river slime under Malfunction Junction or around 26 somewhere
I'm
around
gonna say that's a
Asheville.
guarantee with this town.
Yeah. So the what I would say, if anybody who's got those questions, go to the Bible first. That needs to be your basis for where you get your truth and your information on the spiritual world.
Anchor.
So I totally believe in that demons and angels are real, because I believe the Bible and I believe I've witnessed some of that firsthand, and it seems to me to be the best explanation for why we see so much evil in our world. Not just because we have a fallen nature, we certainly do. We're all born into sin, but I do believe that there is a spiritual influence of evil about in our world. Of course, that is headed by Satan and his demons who are on the earth to deceive and to destroy. And so all that's very clear in the Bible. And so Ghostbusters hints at all of that. And of course, it does it in a comedic way and over-the-top way. But it can be a good springboard topic for people who are asking those questions, wanting to know. Now, the whole disembodied spirit thing, hauntings, ghosts, my worldview would tag that to be more of demonic deception, because the Bible is very clear that when a person dies, where their soul goes, the Bible says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So immediately at the moment of death, the soul exits the body, and if you are of faith in Christ, you go to heaven, be with the Lord. Hebrews 9:27 says it's appointed once for a man to die, and then after that the judgment. So that would be in hell. So the soul goes to one of those two places. It doesn't hang around in old haunted mansions and barns and whatnot and drive
Old
people
libraries.
crazy. Yeah, libraries. That's kind of the biblical background behind all that. Interesting story. As we're talking about ghosts, if you want to go to the book of 1 Samuel, go toward the end of it, and King Saul actually goes to visit a witch at the end of that chapter because he's trying to divine the future. He's wanting to know what the outcome of a battle is going to be as he's getting ready to go and battle the Philistines. And so he totally goes off rails. Saul is like, he's supposed to be the king, but really he's completely gone off the rails and he's not listening to God, and he's after David and all that. But in the end of the book, he goes and he consults a witch. Her name's the Witch of Endor, which I don't know if that's where they got the name Endor for Return of the Jedi. Yeah, you can go read that story. It's right there. And she conjures the spirit of the dead prophet Samuel. And Samuel actually delivers a message of judgment to Saul and tells him that, hey, you're gonna die. And this isn't going to work out like the way that you think it is. And anyway, if you go to the end of 1 Samuel, Saul ends up falling on his own sword. He commits suicide. He loses the battle. That's how David takes over the kingdom. But that's a very interesting story, one that I really don't completely understand because it's definitely got a lot of supernatural in there. But that would be the only Bible example that I could pull to point to a ghost, quote unquote. And I'll just leave it at that. So go read that story for yourself. You can do your own research and make your own determination about that. Another cool connection with Ghostbusters and the Bible is they actually quote the Bible in Ghostbusters at the end of the movie, toward the end of the movie, when they're riding around in Ecto-1 and everything's really becoming unhinged. This is before the firehouse catastrophe where they shut down the containment unit and all the ghosts go crazy.
Out the top. Yep.
So there's a little moment there where Ray and Winston are riding in the Ecto. Remember that? And
That's a good scene.
Yeah,
That's
and Winston asked him, "Hey Ray, do you believe in God?" And Ray says, "Well, I've never met him." and then Winston comes back. He says, "Well, I do, and man, I just love Jesus. I love his style." He says something like that. And then he says to Ray, he says, "Do you remember reading something in the Bible about the last days when the dead would rise from the grave?" And then they quote Revelation 6:12. Or Ray actually quotes it. "And I looked, and he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became as blood." And then Winston finishes the line, "And the seas boiled, and the skies fell. Judgment Day." Yeah, Judgment Day. And so they actually take that whole quote from the Bible and put it in there. And I actually think that scripture, Revelation 6:12, is it not tattooed on Ray's arm?
Close your ears, Nathan.
No, I saw that.
It's in the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer.
Yeah. When he answers the phone in the trailer.
Cult.
Yeah. So I wanted to make that connection and give a little context of where that's coming from. So that's coming obviously from the book of Revelation 6:12. Actually, that's a verse describing one of the judgments that's going to take place on the earth during the tribulation period. So the Bible predicts that the last 7 years of human history will be the worst of all, and it will be a time of judgment and wrath where God is pouring out his wrath on the world. It's all preceding the return of Christ, and toward the end of chapter 6 is where you get that sixth seal. So there's 21 separate judgments in the book of Revelation, 6 seal judgments, 6 trumpet judgments, and 6 bowl judgments. They get worse as time goes on. They get more severe. And so it's interesting that they quote that, because really that passage has nothing to do with the dead rising. It's more about the astronomical things that are going to take place on the planet as the world is being awakened to God's judgment. So Jesus also references that same passage in Matthew 24, and I don't have that scripture in front of me, but Jesus references the same thing. Interesting point, by that time in the tribulation period in Revelation 6:12, when that judgment happens, a fourth of human life has already been wiped off the earth, according to the Bible at that time, and it's been wiped off the earth by pestilence, war, famine, and that's also the passage in Revelation 6 where we read about the fourth horseman of apocalypse. The first one is the Antichrist. The second one is war and famine. The third one is death. Or the third one, I believe, let me back up, is the rider with the scales, talking about economic inflation and all that. And then the last one is death. And so not a good time to be alive on the earth. So if you look at Bible prophecy, it's laid out in a few stages. The next event on God's prophetic calendar, I believe, is the rapture, where Jesus returns to remove his bride, the church, from the earth before the Antichrist comes and before the tribulation begins, which is what Ray and Winston were talking about there in that passage. And then the last 7 years will be overseen by the Antichrist, who will be a world leader. He'll have a one world government, one world economic system, one world religion. If you don't accept his mark, if you don't get on board with his way of doing life, you'll be punished. And then, of course, the end of that 7-year period is the return of Christ, where you have the Battle of Armageddon, which isn't really a battle. It's basically Jesus returns and speaks the word, and it's all over with. So that's the context behind where that comes from. And we just want to leave you with that good Bible information, that there is hope. The world is a dark place. There is evil. There is a spiritual reality behind all of it. But there is a way to have salvation, forgiveness, perspective, wisdom, and all those things that we long for. It's through a right and a true relationship with Jesus Christ. And those who truly know him are promised that they will escape the day of wrath. So all of that tribulation stuff, all the judgment, all the wrath things, are not reserved for the child of God, the person who put their faith in Christ. They can't escape it. And that's where we would leave you to. We enjoy the movies. We love all of the one-liners and the special effects, and it's a lot of fun.
Nobody steps on a church in my town.
Yeah, that's right. Nobody steps on a church in my town. We love all that stuff. It's fun, but we want to leave you with that theological background as well, because that's the most important thing. You guys want to add anything else as we close this episode up?
I just got one thing. I was just reading that the original concept for the Ecto-1 was supposed to fly. It was originally supposed to fly right out of the firehouse.
I like the 50s hearse approach.
They
that's
changed
ambitious.
it.
Yeah.
I like the 50s hearse approach. Nice.
Well, we're going to wrap this up, and in fact, here in a little bit, we're going to ride on over to the theater and check out Ghostbusters Afterlife. So we hope that you'll go and check it out as well. And until next time, we'll see you.
See ya.
Peace.
4 o'clock show.